Well, if ever there was an Olympics for intellectual property rights, then I think the top countries would have to be your Nordics, Finland, Sweden, Switzerland would definitely be in there. The US, the likes of Singapore, would all take the top spots. It's because these countries have some of the strongest IP regimes in the world, and it's certainly a major reason they continue to be at the leading edge of technology and attract some of the world's best and brightest scientists and entrepreneurs. I know that some might argue the protection for IP is actually a dampener on the free market, but I think they mistakenly overlook the essential role that an individual's rights to his creations plays in a thriving market economy. And a lot of entrepreneurs don't think that they actually generate IP, but in reality, it's pretty much all they're doing all the time. Well, I've got Shamin Raghunandan, partner at Spur & Fisher, which is an IP law firm that really specializes in this area, on the line. Hi there, Shamin.
Hi, Michael. How are you?
Good, thanks. I thought we had lost you for a second there. What IP issues, when you deal with entrepreneurs on a daily basis, I'm sure, what IP issues do you see facing many aspiring entrepreneurs today?
Well, firstly, intellectual property is a complex area of law, and the foremost challenge that is faced by new businesses and entrepreneurs is a lack of understanding of what intellectual property encompasses. Like you said, new businesses and entrepreneurs are constantly creating innovation, new products, new services, new technology. And there's an essential lack of understanding and not knowing who to partner with to help them through the process of navigating the intellectual property landscape.
It can be overwhelming when someone looks at intellectual property law and when one creates IP that is worth protecting. Well, do you trademark? Do you patent? Do you copyright? What route do you go? So approaching it from the very beginning, I mean, how and when should an entrepreneur go about implementing an IP plan, given that startups have limited resources and perhaps see approaching a lawyer to seek advice up front as prohibitive? What's the best way to establish a bit of a framework if you're entering into a business where you think you might be generating IP regularly?
Well, I think entrepreneurs firstly need to avoid the mindset that their business is a one-man show. They cannot be a jack of all trades. So they need to be in tune with intellectual property, and with that comes a responsibility of educating yourself as to what it encompasses. IP is a bundle of rights, like you said, from the patent to a trademark to copyright to trade secrets to registered designs. There is a plethora of different legal aspects associated with it. So, number one, tune yourself with the various forms of intellectual property and educate yourself now rather than avoiding the headaches down the line. A little bit of knowledge will assist with that. And also, they need to do it from the very onset. Entrepreneurs need to carry out their own audits to identify, what has been protected, what warrants protection, and work with legal professionals from the beginning. And, they can even negotiate rates as well and negotiate fixed rates. I think that many law firms now are alive to the fact that, within the South African context, we have to generate solutions for emerging businesses. So do not think that IP is just for business. It is equally as important for new businesses.
Well, I mean, if you're a startup, for example, and you're attending one of these lovely incubators pockmarked around Johannesburg or in Braamfontein, we've just had the Tshimologong precinct launched, and you develop an app that could become the next Airbnb or the next big disruptive thing. You don't have the capital initially, but surely you as an entrepreneur could then, as you say, go and sit down with the legal advisor and negotiate a deal on a sliding scale based on projected future revenues, for example. But there is scope here to get advice up front without having to incur any costs up front. When we look at a business that is being created from the ground up, a startup. It's being bootstrapped, and you're putting all the hours and the blood, sweat and tears, and maybe, refinancing the house and the car and throwing everything into it. What you're ultimately doing is also building up this asset of value that you want to sell at some stage. And when you're pitching to potential investors or partners that might want to partner with you and help you exit at a certain stage, they'll want to see that you've got those sorts of things in place, that their IP is protected.
Absolutely. It is so essential to firstly, have IP in the first place. It must be something of value, and you need to identify what that value is and how it is going to contribute. And then also, you need to have a solid business plan, when you are pitching to investors and setting out what your market is like and how your business is different from your rivals, and, a strategy for dealing with competition. And when you have all of that in place, it's easier to find investors, be it from the private sector or from the government. So you want to make sure, or you want to get across that you've actually taken the time to put something in place, because like you said, once you have protection in place, it's actually going to be your business tool to commercialize your assets. Protection is just one part of it. The next step is trying to identify how you are going to exploit it and bring in a source of revenue through your registered intellectual property.
Now, some things seem quite obvious. I've developed an idea and I want to trademark the name around the idea, be it the service or a website or anything like that. But what are the things that sometimes entrepreneurs forget? Are there any tips you can give us there around areas that perhaps are obscured from view to the non-IP legal types out there?
Well, firstly, when you're about to launch a new name, you've obviously spent a lot of money and time coming up with that perfect name for the business. And it's actually quite sad how many businesses do not do the proper checks in order to ensure or determine whether they can even use that name. So there is a trademark clearance process that will help you determine whether you can actually launch that new business into the market or that new product. So you have to make sure that you carry out a clearance search, because what you do not want to do is spend thousands of rands in a marketing strategy, in labeling, in creating your website, only to discover down the line that you're not entitled to use that name because there's someone else already on the market who's using it or who has secured a trademark and is before you.
Provided they're not just squatting on it, waiting for someone to come along with a good idea and that they can offload it to.
Yes, well, provided that's the case. But, South Africa, usually how it works is that whoever gets there first is in a better position. And that is why it is essential before you start your business, before you disclose your ideas, that you actually consult with the right people to make sure that you're not giving away your valuable creative assets and you have the proper protection in place. Because it's happened before where, entrepreneurs who have not done this are faced with costly litigation down the line in trying to get back what's theirs, whether, someone intentionally, used the idea or the name or not. You want to avoid that type of scenario where you have to spend money on litigation. You'd rather spend that money on investing in your own business.
Be careful what you say, I think, far too enthusiastically at the dinner party when your idea hasn't been protected.
Absolutely.
Shamin,
yes.
We unfortunately are going to have to leave it there, but it's been most interesting sharing with you some ways that entrepreneurs can build their businesses with the best IP framework right up front. That was Shamin Raghunandan, partner at Spur & Fisher.